Gladys, B sister. um, and I have been her sister for 25 years.
Yeah.
Uh,
We'll go with that one. Go with that
I'm currently on lockdown in Brixton in South London. So it's real here where some people don't believe it's lockdown and some of us do. So I am in the house and I'm um, locked down with my son and my mother. And I'm still working, so I'm working full time for a railway company, and I do very crazy hours at home, even as I did in the office.
one.
So,
Thank you for joining me, Gladys. And I am
cool.
on furlough, as I've been saying for the past 9 weeks. I work part time for a training and development company based in Cambridge, the AMA, and I also do um, have my own self-employed businesses as well, which are tiny businesses when compared to other people who are really sort of gung-ho and having a higher turnover. But I do writing facilitation and speaking as part of that business consultancy. And I also do crafting and make and produce body butters and crafts as well. So
Excellent body
we
butters.
have, I'm in Derby, just letting you know we're down just about 140 miles down the road from you, or up the road from you. And I wanted to talk to you today because you've had so much experience of being in employment. Not that and obviously I'm your older sister, so I've got a few years over you, but yeah. But in terms of where I'm coming from, I'm looking at the fact that we're gonna be, I was going to say digging ourselves out of lockdown, or jumping out of lockdown, or even though we've had the slow release and Boris Johnson has said, right, okay, then we can begin to relax the social distancing rules in order for us to meet our friends and family. Um, in terms of looking at the economic climate and in terms of looking at people who are employed or who are on furlough, we've got a period of time in terms of the end of June for people who are on the, I suppose, first phase of furlough. I might even call it the second phase of furlough. So I'm in the second phase of furlough. Originally, it was going to be 8 weeks, go back to work at the beginning of June. Then it was increased by a further month. So that means that people were given 3 months furlough. And then the third phase is to take it to October. That's the final
Right.
piece, isn't it? So for me, I'm really interested in the fact that as we've relaxed these rules and as non-essential shops are opening from like the 8th or the 15th of June, that means people are going back to work. How do you see that? How do you see the landscape? Because you've been working full time, so it's like, is it back to work?
Well, so yes, I've been working. I'm currently a contractor, so I'm self-employed. I own my own business, and I um, currently am contracting for Network Rail. So it's been a nervous time for, I think, many people for many reasons. Some of us, well, I don't know if I consider ourselves lucky, but we stayed in our jobs, in our roles, and we're carrying on that front. But some people, they're seeing things like salary cuts or reduced hours, or things like that. Then obviously there's the furloughed portion, which seemed a sort of a really lucky, or not so lucky, but a comforting thing for option for people to choose, for businesses to choose to support their staff and to keep the option for things to carry on after what we're calling the lockdown. And then obviously people are losing their jobs, which is horrendous, because let's let's not kid ourselves. This is the lockdown and the pandemic, and learning how to come out of the health crisis and how to manage that is going to evolve into something else, and it might evolve into something else which is a lot more tougher, because not only will we be living in a society where we're dealing with this new virus that we're not so sure of how it works and how what it's going to do or evolve and how we manage it, We're also entering a time of recession where businesses are going to have to recover. You know, there won't be that safety net or furlough, or there might not be that safety net or furlough, and the options will get a lot more tighter. So, you know, at the back of the end of the year, and obviously it's happening in autumn when that safety net is said to be fully withdrawn, happening in autumn, dark nights, you know, flu season, there's going to be a lot to deal with. It's going to get pretty real. So I think my view of it is not to be sort of doom and gloom, but to have an understanding that this is not over, where, you know, in terms of the elements of what this crisis or what this period in our history is going to look like, it's far from over. It's the, you know, there's recession, there's redundancies, there's then building the country back up again, there's getting people back to work, there's lots of things that's going to happen. So in terms of people thinking, you know, biding their time till October or to whenever, when things get back to normal, I personally feel that there is no normal. It's going to be a new thing, and we owe it to ourselves to be open-minded about that, or at least prepare for what may come.
As you're speaking there, I'm thinking, right, okay, then I've been sitting on this thing called furlough, and there's like currently there's about 8.5 million people who are on furlough,
Yeah.
and about 2.5, I think, million people in terms of self-employment people who are self-employed who claim grants or some sort of government grant as well. So those people, you know, we're hoping that that's enough for us to start the economy. But as I'm sitting in furlough, I'm wondering, there are some people who have had a real kind of like holistic, almost spiritual thoughts about how that's going to look for them. They're thinking, I don't want to go back to that company, they didn't treat me nice, or they're not treating me nice right now, whilst I am in furlough. And they're looking to pivot. They're looking to change. And also you've got places like here in Derby, you've got the 9,000 people that Rolls Royce are going to get rid of, etc. And how that's going to affect the whole infrastructure and the whole supply chain. So how do, you know, you're somebody who people have always, I suppose, kind of like headhunted you or contacted you like jobs and stuff like that on a regular basis. So you are always kind of like, I suppose, at the top of that particular game in terms of thinking about refreshing your career strategy, next steps. What should people in furlough be thinking about pivoting?
I think for me, just the type of person I am, I don't do well with change, especially which I always say this is my go-to question in interviews. What's your weakness? One of my go-to questions is, I don't do well with change. And, you know, obviously, my profession as a project and program manager, as a change manager, as a strategic manager, has to deal with change. So I don't deal well with change. How have I dealt with that? I get ahead of the game as much as possible, and I manage the change. So if I've got control of the change, the impact or the surprise or the result of it isn't necessarily in someone else's hands, it's in my hands. So again, this is what I say in terms of your question. I feel one of the things that I've always done, you know, I've bombed interviews before, and they have been horrendous and scary and not great. And so for me, throughout my career, I just learned that I should always be prepared and always think ahead. So even when I was in a permanent job, I was in a permanent job for about 9+ years previously, and then before that another job which was also about 8+ years. One of the things I always did was made sure, whether I was looking for work or not, which I wasn't mostly, whether I was looking for work or not, always made myself available and tried to have at least 1 or 2 interviews a year, just to test the market, just to test what and how people speak, what they're looking for, and to put myself under that nervous pressure, if that makes sense. Because it's always great to look for work when you're in work, but that's the luxury. But then if you're now having to look for work when you're out of work and you don't have a sort of toolkit or experience or skill set in terms of approaching it, you kind of have to learn that in one of the most nerve-wracking times of your life that you'll be in terms of your need for finding work. So I always made sure that I would put myself forward for jobs and get an interview and have interviews as much as possible. Not really to make a joke of the system, but to also test whether my skill set is at the standards that companies are still looking for. Because obviously if they've seen my CV, they've looked at my skills, they've looked at my experience, they've heard me speak, and then they're able to have further discussions with me. That then tells me that I am of a level of employability, and so I'm still good. So and if not, what do I need to do? Do I need to train? Do I need to get more experience? Do I need to think of ways how to answer questions? Because that's one of the things that I feel has changed. Whereas in the past, it's been very black and white. What do you do? How, do you meet these parameters? Have you got this degree? Have you got this number of years of experience? Whereas I've found that now these situations, these interviews have changed a whole lot, and it does it's more than just sort of talking about your CV. It's more talking about yourself as yourself, and people don't know how to do that. And it's yeah, it's like, what's your innermost dream, and who is Gladys? Who am I? Gladys is sat in front of you. But when questions like that or things like that are asked of you, and it's not just, oh, I know how to code, or I know Prince 2, or I know these things. You have to be ready, and if you're not,
are you saying then? As I sit here in my garden and drink my water and meditate,
Prosecco.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That the landscape has changed in terms of how people. That sounds like that's not the type of question I'm expecting. I'm expecting them to reinforce what's on my CV, because it's like, you didn't talk about what's on your CV. I've been to those interviews years ago where they'll say, well, you didn't mention what was on your CV, and I was thinking, but I put it on my CV. I was expecting you to talk about it. It's like, well, because you didn't double up and basically say what you wrote, that's why you marked down. So you're saying those days are gone?
I don't know if those days are gone. I just feel that the caliber has changed, and if you are seeking to work for a world-class or a best practice, good practice employer, they're going to challenge you in terms of understanding you, not necessarily understanding the classes and the degrees and the exams that you sat, because those are all there. You have the certificates, you've done them. They can check your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn tells the full story. It's all there. That doesn't, if you've had publications or whatever, they can find all that about you anyway. What they do want to find out when you're sat face to face in front of them is, what are your drivers? What is your motivation? What are your passions? How do you work? How do you work in a team? Things like that. So things that don't necessarily pertain to your employment. It pertains to your life. How do you interact with your friends, and how you interact with your teammates, your colleagues at work are not far apart. So it's things that talk about you as a person. And for me, that's the way I interview, that's for sure, because I feel, on any given day, exams are passed, and I don't belittle those. They're very, they're not small adventures, but they're there to see. They can be checked. You can, so whatever's on your CV can be checked. It's about making more best use of the time when you're sat in front of a candidate, or when you as an employee, a future employee, sat in front of your boss, asking the deep questions to understand, will I fit into this culture? Does this person fit into this organization? Do we share our values? Am I going to enjoy working here? Will they enjoy working in my team? Will they push our team forward, our business plan forward? Will I be able to add value? All of those questions, and those don't necessarily come from it's not necessarily the what you've done, it's the how you've done that. So in terms of interviews, the ones that I've been involved in recently, either both sides of the table, are more about I would say 20 to 40% credentials and 60% who are you, what are you about.
When we're putting together when we're prepping, when we're actually looking at prepping for the next step, whether it's an internal move or whether it's an external one, especially right now coming out of the lockdown, there are a lot of people who don't know where to start with in terms of saying, this is me, this is my value, I have done this, fine, I've done this job or whatever, but they don't really know how to say, right, okay, then this is what I've been, you know, how do you lay that kind of market stall? Yeah.
We do it every day. Anyone that's got social media does it. They've got a shop window to their life. So we do it for our friends and for our you know, for our families. We create a shop window. No one puts their picture when they just woke up and haven't brushed their teeth or cleaned the bogey from their eyes. Sorry, but do you know what I mean? We don't put those pictures. We put a persona that reflects who we are, but it reflects the best of who we are. So if you do that for your friends and family, why then do you expect to not know what persona, who you are, what it is you want to get across about yourself to your future employers? So this is where your LinkedIn comes in. You have your LinkedIn account, and it provides an insight of who you are and how you work. But then when you're in front of an employer, you know, you've got to know why you're sat there. You've got to know what it is, and it's easier than you know, than quoting and throwing statistics about what the company does and what their turnover is and all of that can be done. That's fine.
But
Google.
That's not a thing anymore.
It can be a thing. It can be a thing because obviously it shows that you've taken the time to understand who you're talking to. But Dr. Google gives you all that, so it is a thing. But then again, it's not necessarily the what, it's the how. It's the how you've done it. So you've not what you found and not what the statistics you found and you can throw at me and tell me about my company or my project, because I obviously know it, because that's why I'm here trying to employ you. But the fact that you're telling it to me shows me that you have you're diligent, or that you've taken time, that you've shown an interest, that you haven't just turned up unprepared. So it can be useful, but it's not necessarily what you know and what you say. It's about how and why you said it and why you've gone there. So it shows your sort of drivers. You value information, or you value analytical study or things like that. So that's for me. Yeah, sorry.
When you're doing that, so in terms of the kind of like defining the different areas of what you've done or achieved, there's so many CVs that are online. Is it about straight copy? Is it about looking at them for guidance? Is it about looking within yourself? How are we trying to, make this part of ourselves? Because it's a CV, story of your life.
Another thing that I've learned over the years and that I look out for whenever I look at CVs is outcomes. Because in the past, we would write a CV as a biography, is that right? But just just a list of all of the jobs, all of the colleges, all of the things. It's pretty much, I was here in this year and I was here in that year and I was here in that year. Okay, fine, but what did you do? And not necessarily what did you do, what were the outcomes? How did you do it? So did you increase turnover for your company by 2%? And how did you do this? Did you manage stakeholder engagement, and what was your feedback? So it's all about trying to bring through what are your outcomes as well. So what was your part? What part did you play? It's great that we can all put fancy organizations, but not all of us can do that. Some of us, especially now where we have this cottage industry where you might not recognize companies that people have come from or worked with. You might want to, or if you don't even have a history of of companies or whatever, but yet the one company that you did work for, your role there was so impactful, and not necessarily because of your stature in the company, not because you were director or senior manager or anything, just because you were impactful in the role that you were given, and the outcome that you produced in that role was the best you could do, or impress, or at least impressive. Then that's what you need to draw out, and that's what for me a powerful CV is. And if you can do that in 2 sides of A4, that's even more amazing.
Wow, 2 sides of A4.
I know, which is why you have LinkedIn to do the rest.
So what? So that
LinkedIn,
people can.
Exactly, because LinkedIn doesn't have a limit of stuff, so you can flesh things out. And LinkedIn, you can put your articles, you can put whatever you have about you. You can put your high school netball team sort of things. You can, but if an employer wants to really get to know you, they can go to your LinkedIn and they will find, and they do. I have to say they do. Every job that I've had probably in the last 10 years, or any interest, has been through LinkedIn solely. I've been found or shown interest because of LinkedIn. So I think anyone with work should really consider LinkedIn a big asset.
So when I'm looking at our people, when I'm looking at people who are Black British, and they are looking at their own product, their life as a product to put onto the employee landscape as well, I'm thinking they are perhaps doing themselves a disservice, because obviously we're not the people who are getting those senior roles. We're less likely to be in those senior roles or in those important, influential roles. So, for example, we have the key workers. You know what I mean? They're the bus drivers and the nurses and the cleaners and the carers. So, we're not the head nurse. We're not the head of transportation or the managers there. How can they be looking at their CV, their life, their LinkedIn, in order to across that they are key? They are key, and they've done some key stuff. They've delivered some key work.
Everybody is key. Everyone has, as long as there's air in your lungs, you add value. You have done something, whether you helped a food bank recently, or whether you have added value somehow, somewhere. All you have to do is talk about that. Just talk about it, and someone will see the value in what you add. 100%. Where you've driven, whether you're a bus driver, whether you're, a bus driver, a nurse, all of these things, you add value. I mean, look at it now. If this whole corona thing, a year ago or whenever it was ago, the nurses or bus drivers or whatever were being described as low skill. Well, guess what? They're saving our lives right now. They're literally giving their lives to save our lives. So how is that low skill? So the thing is, it's not the insight that we have that we should be focusing on. It's not what people are telling us. It's what you feel about yourself, and that's where it starts. If you believe, I fully understand sort of where you're coming from, because I used to have, a very long time ago, I used to have this imposter syndrome, and it's a hard thing to get over. It's a hard thing to say, no, actually, I deserve to be in this space. And not only do I deserve to be in this space, I actually deserve to be in that space over there, up there in those glass rooms over there. I need to be in that. I deserve. And not only do I deserve to be in that space, I can actually do it myself, and I can do it better, because I know what my values are, and I know I can add value to the customers or stakeholders that are going into that glass room on that top floor seat, top floor level. So it's an internal battle. So when you say our people, I just think the journey starts with yourself. Wake up every day knowing you've got something to offer. So whether you've got something to offer in the role that you have, or whether you've got something to offer furthermore, and then hold on to that, work towards it, and keep going. It's always a thing. and this is the interesting thing. There are lots of companies and lots of roles. Again, I'm not belittling education or qualifications, because I've got those and they were tough to get as well. But this is where a lot of employers are now focusing on a person's values and their internal culture, their internal aspirations, and their internal drive, to understand whether they can add value to their businesses. And that's important, because you can get someone from top universities with a top degree and they will fall flat in your organization, whereas you can get someone hungry and excited and empowered and proactive, who hasn't necessarily had the opportunities to achieve those elevated qualification, those doors open to them, but they will work hard and do wonders for your organization. And a lot of employers are turning around to that now, including a lot of very big ones. So I think it just starts with you as a person. Just get through your own crap, pardon my language.
Feel, yeah. How do you, I mean, lockdown, corona, working from home, having, you know, the different types of distractions that are all going on in our households, in terms of kids, teenagers in the background. You've got mum there. I got my partner here working and I'm not working, and it's such a combination of noises and sounds and energies going off. How are we doing this? How do companies come out? Because I want to know, how are companies going to?
They're not. It's going to stay like this. It's going to stay. No, let's get this right. At the end of the day, if you're Google and you're one of these massive companies, or whichever company, and you're paying £2 million a month or something to have property in the city, with all of the terrorist attacks, with all of the things that you're having to pay for and organize and whatever, you're still operating for at least 9 weeks now, still operating as a company for 9 weeks while everyone's in their home. This is going to carry on. This is, so I heard somewhere that productivity has increased for certain sectors, for certain service sectors, where they can have their staff at home. And so that's on the company level. So again, in terms of how I think, I'm trying to think ahead of the game. This is the new normal, and I love it. I'm all for it. I'm a homebod. I mean, it's difficult. So my furlough is my mother, who I brought over to stay with me. Oh my gosh. So my mother, who's stayed with me now for the last 9 weeks. Gosh, let's move on. My teenage son and mother. So my teenage son, who's a pure sporty and hasn't been able to do any sport, so he's just bouncing off the walls. My office is the kitchen dining table, so again, surrounded by food, especially with a mother that does nothing but finds new things to cook for no good reason. So yeah, all of the challenges. Then, homeschooling, trying to get the teenager to do what he needs to do to keep on top of things. So there are lots of distractions. There's lots of things that and I'm not belittling what other people are dealing with, because there's loads. And I to be honest, I'm very lucky. I'm lucky 100+%. But yeah, it's difficult. But it might not change. This might be the thing, and we have to adapt. And you have to show that you can adapt. I mean, like I said, I'm a contractor, so I'm self-employed. So I don't have employment laws that necessarily protect me as someone else would be protected. So I still have to be on my A game. I can't drop the ball. So I'm working crazy hours, and it's fine, because, like I say, I'm a homebody, because I can go I could go outside, work outside. I can stay in the kitchen. I can log off for a bit and go back on, but I've got options, and I'm grateful that I don't have to you know, go. I was protected during the lockdown, and I didn't have to be exposed to the virus as others have. So I'm 100% grateful. But yeah, I think this is definitely something that people should get used to in some ways.
In doing that, in terms of getting used to it, does that mean that there are CEOs across the country, let's just stick to England right now, or maybe even the UK, who are either waiting to see what their other CEO down the road is doing, or they are able to say, do you know what, I'm going to lead my organization and my people who are at home, and I'm going to have empathy.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some great leadership already. 100%. We do as a country have have a good sort of framework of health and well-being, and so I feel a lot of businesses have taken that 100% on board and have been checking in with their people, have been finding ways to you know, have the care. I mean, don't get me
Well,
wrong,
even in your
obviously.
sector.
Well, again, so yeah, I had to think about that. I had to think about that again as as the words were coming out of my mouth. But yeah, I just feel there's no excuse. We have a lot of information and tools and techniques how to ensure our staff have good health and well-being, whether it's allowing enforcing shutdowns at the end of the day, because that could be something that people don't do, whether it's ensuring that people take their lunch breaks so they can check in and have video calls with friends and family, at least have the social life, especially people who are living alone and are slightly isolated. There's a lot that should be done, and I would be surprised. Like I say, I'm self-employed, so I don't know what others are doing, but I would be very surprised that things should be falling through the cracks, especially for organisations. There are employers, obviously, small businesses and things like that, where they may not have they may claim that they don't have the facilities or the space to do good care of their staff, but even then there's a responsibility to all employers to ensure that staff are at their best. And I think it would be a disgrace if the UK slipped on that. But
I'm hearing,
hey
because
ho.
I work in the arts, heritage and cultural sector. So in terms of looking at some of those organizations and hearing stories from different colleagues, it's been really interesting how some
Really,
are not being looked after. They're not being
that's
looked after in
terrible.
furlough. They're not being looked into or looked after, thought about in furlough. And also, I'm quite surprised in terms of reading, or rather hearing the news, that people are being sacked already. And it's like, so some companies didn't take full advantage of the whole furlough at this moment in time. So I find that a bit kind of shocking. I think some of the big ones as well decided not to, was it
Yeah,
like the Whitbreads or something like that? So
British
that,
Airways as well, isn't it?
yeah, so I find that really interesting that they didn't take advantage of those situations to be able to, one, look after their staff in terms of financially, for so that they can get their head around looking after themselves, emotionally and physically during this lockdown, because
Yeah.
it is a really different place that we're in, that we were to a year ago, let alone to from January to now. And but for some bosses, some CEOs, or some managers, some line managers, not to really to be only looking after themselves in terms of
Yeah.
from a work point of view,
Yeah.
as opposed to saying, okay, then even if we are thinking about redundancy later on
Yeah.
down the line, let's have a plan for those members of
Yeah.
staff who we're going to have to let go of. Or
Yeah.
whilst we are in furlough, let's look in on our staff and look at
Yeah.
the health well-being kind of strategy for our staff. And I think it's a real shame, because I feel once we come out of this, that there are going to be people who do not, in terms of members of staff right now,
Yeah.
they'll be thinking, do you know what? is how you treated me, I'm
Yeah.
off. I'm off. I'm gone.
But just, I think, yeah, I think I need to, I need to take back, because I think you're right. I think, and I think, again, I go back to managing change. So for me, I have, okay, I mean, I've experienced employers that have not, do not take the responsibility that they should, and it's not hard to not to. And this was one of the reasons why I branched out on my own. Because again, that change, and that was also a mental change. So that was change on my stress levels, that was change on my health, that was change to my working practices in terms of the demands that were being put on me without any due care and attention. So, like I say, when that was in the hands of someone else or other people or an organization, it was one of those things where I just had to say, well, okay, no, I'm going to, I need to control my environment, because you're obviously not going to take my interests and my health and my well-being as a priority as I would like you to. And it is suffering, because, you know, I can say that I'm a strong and I'm you know, thick-skinned and all of those things, but unfortunately, as we can see, you know, as we see in America, you know, necks can break, and people can have the air taken out of their lungs,
Right.
regardless of how strong you think they are. And so I had to take that control back. I had to take that control back for myself, which is one of the reasons why I branched out on my own. And so you're right. I do feel if people don't, the only advice I can give, and that's the only advice I know to give, and I know it's not necessarily the right thing for everyone, is to take their power, and just know it isn't. And the thing is, it's again, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but I feel it will get worse before it gets better, because even as we come out of this lockdown supported area, we are going to go into a recession. There's still the impact of Brexit to deal with. There's now the new ways of how we're going to live. People aren't shopping on high streets. That was happening already. You know, people weren't shopping on high streets anymore. Now people aren't going to shop on high, you know, everyone's, you know, put all of their money onto the internet more and more over the last 9 weeks. So a lot of things have changed and changed forever. And so just know that, and plan and think about it. Don't stress about it, but just think about it, mull it over, understand how you can pivot, where you can change, because if things do come up, just, you know, you might be a little bit more prepared than when a selfish employer just treats you like you're a number, not a person.
I was what was it, last weekend or so, and we were looking at Ratman, the Ratman battle. Um, Explain the Ratman battle, because I want to talk about how some of the people dealt with the
That
process.
was fun to watch, though, wasn't it? So Ratman, he's a director, producer, whatever. He's fantastic. So he did Shiloh's story on
Silent
YouTube.
story.
I only know this because of my teen in the house, but I watched it and it was impressive. He then went on to do the movie Blue Story, which was also great. So it gave a good, you know, something from these shores, something British made and everything, and obviously it showed the gritty nature of teen gang life in the UK. So he, obviously we're all on lockdown, so he's doing casting or something for his new movie, and apparently this movie's got Russell Crowe in or someone. So anyway, so he's doing this new movie, and he needs to cast some roles. So he held an open casting session on
On
Instagram
Instagram
last
Live.
weekend. On
I
Instagram
wish
Live, so
I
it
had
wasn't
watched
even,
it.
so everyone had the opportunity to go into this Instagram Live and say, interview me, I am going to be the next best thing since sliced bread, since Will Smith, since, you know, yeah,
Udeh.
Michael, yeah, all of those
I never knew
people.
people.
Michael Wood,
Oh,
that's it, Michael Wood.
God.
So Michael Wood was the guy from Blue Story. So yeah, so they were all coming on, and I tried to get my team to go on, but he was having none of it. But I think we tried to get all of the children on, didn't we, B? So they weren't having any of it. So we just had a good time watching. Great, fantastic talent.
2 hours worth, because it was only for an
2
hour.
hours.
Then it was extended for another hour. And I thought that was very, very impressive. And also, it must take a lot of energy to do casting. I know that because I've been a theatre producer. So in terms of being able to watch people come in and bare their soul for a few minutes and to, you know, get it down pat. There's all different ages and people on here coming in, and so Rapman would let them in and they would do their little 1 minute or 5 minutes, etc. So the brief was very specific in terms of what he wanted, but some people forgot the brief, or
everyone forgot the brief.
And he
so
asked
the brief,
people, go on.
It was 1 minute from it was do 1 minute and do it from one of his movies, right? It was from nobody did any of it. I think there was one. No, well, she did. We can't count her because it didn't work. So yeah, the brief was specific, but for some reason, it didn't go that way. But they were still good, and he was very gracious, and it was amazing how he kept his face like really poker face while he was, and he wasn't giving away what he felt about.
It wasn't like Britain's
people's
Got Talent.
it was like, oh, you're so crap, or you know, his facial expressions were just solid. So I can't do that.
He gave positive feedback.
Yes, every time,
I mean,
which was
he
amazing.
Even gave negative feedback in a positive way. It was like, wow.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That takes skill.
So
not to criticize. Yeah.
In terms of looking at that, I just wondered how would, for me, looking at that as a theatre producer, as a creative producer, I would look at that and say, in terms of preparing for something, look at the brief. The brief is there to guide you, and if you meet the brief, then you can maybe play around with the brief if you've got time. So
it will be interesting to see how any of those that did get a chance, how they've done, whether they had second viewings, because there were lots of other producers and casting agents and things watching, so it would be interesting to see if any of them got contacted, and if we see them on the big screen next year, like, oh my gosh, I saw her on Instagram Live.
Yes. Also, it'll be interesting to see if anybody as well, to know whether they learned something next time as well. Because some of the people who got, because I think he also was looking for people who hadn't, who were not already actors, amateur actors.
Amateurs,
Any amateur actors. He didn't want any amateurs because you know the system. So when you don't know the system, how do you prepare?
No, but when you're being interviewed, or when you're being interviewed, casted, performance, whatever it is, if it means that much to you, you are going to be ready. You are going to be, boom, on point. I mean, Naomi Campbell, didn't she get spotted on the London Underground? So obviously she didn't wake up every morning without putting a brush in her hair. She woke up every morning with putting a brush in her hair and putting on, you know, some clothes or something. So however your persona is, whatever your passions are, whatever it is you want other people to get across, whatever your shop window is, be ready.
Be ready.
If it means that much to you, be ready.
Yeah. And it's not about the lighting. It's not about the lighting. It's like, sort the lighting out before you get into that space.
It is about the lighting. I know, before you called, to get the good lighting. I want you to see my face. It's about the lighting. Acting is about the lighting. You have to know that we need to see you on the screen, so that they can see whether you fit. Not in shadows, not with what did one guy
fluorescent tubes with multicolored lights like I'm in a nightclub as well. And
do you see me now? Can you see me now?
Oh my days. I know it's daunting, especially when you're with a famous person. There's so many people who possibly could spot you and say, yep, we want this person. Yeah, you can forget your line, but
it was cringeworthy.
It's how you come back in. You can actually come back into your piece without people
Yeah.
even realizing that you've
Yeah.
done wrong. You can take a pause
Yeah.
and continue.
Yeah.
You don't need to apologize. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You don't need
Yeah.
to do the whole apology. You can just
Yeah.
write that into your audition
Well,
and continue. And you can
yeah.
also, take that breath. I think take that breath.
And there was this, I mean, I'm not very, sorry, I'm interrupting, but I'm not very arty or in that space, but read the room. You read the room. You can see that there's 3,000 people waiting to come and get casted. So he wants, and he was clear, he wants to get through as many as possible.
Yeah.
He's not going to waste time while you switch from your mobile phone to your iPad to change rooms, change lights, and then you're asking him if the quality is good enough. That's just crazy. I mean, obviously, if it happens, I mean, yeah, no, it was just crazy. And then there are things that were out of people's hands, which is, I guess the Wi-Fi connection. So some people's Wi-Fi connections were just not strong enough, and so they weren't able to go through, which was really sad because they were ready. But when you're not ready, oh my gosh, that you got to kick yourself for a few days, that's for sure. And the thing is, saying that, he is doing it again tomorrow, so
Really?
it would be interesting. Yeah, he's doing it to
I
go.
think he'll only do an hour. If he does do it, he will only do an hour.
I'm watching though.
He won't extend it and do another hour. Because that's hard.
But that's the thing. So it'll be interesting to see if people have learned from the pitfalls of last week, and whether people were not, where people weren't ready, weren't prepared. You have to be ready. You have to be prepared. This is you.
Game, be ready, and show yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Step into your light and say, yeah, I'm gonna read this piece from here. And sometimes the preamble is there. He does the preamble. He does the preamble.
Yeah. He did that.
You. And that's a really good sign of somebody who kind of knows how to lead and manage a team. Really goes out of his way to ask those initial questions.
Yeah. And he gave them time.
Yeah.
He said, take your time, even though take your time for some people took time. The time.
It was a really, really good process to watch and to be a part of, definitely. And I think there are the lessons to be learned there basically are have that 1 minute script ready.
Have it ready.
Even if you're improvising something, just know the beginning, middle, and end. Know it.
Yeah.
Have a timer. Have a stopwatch.
Yeah.
Have that stopwatch somewhere, or have the watch or clock or something so you can see it and say, "Yep, I'm doing this for the minutes."
Yeah.
Also, and when you step into that space, breathe, and gather yourself. Yeah. Before you step into that space. Know that you're going to be using mobile data.
Yes.
I think just pay the extra for the mobile.
Be ready.
This could be in terms of being that ready for it.
Yeah.
And also make sure that whether you're wearing your do-rag or whether you're coming with, just own it. However you're rocking up, own it. We are in lockdown. We are in lockdown, so there are going to be some. It's going to be rough edges. It's going to be rough.
Everyone has to find space in their home. Yeah. Everyone has to find the space in their home and find, if some people would have gone to studio, if it wasn't lockdown, people would have found their best space.
Yes.
However, you're finding it in your house, wherever you are, but plan. I mean, he gave them time. He advertised this for about 2 weeks or so before. So don't be, there was one guy, he said, "Oh, I didn't know I'll get picked." Why are you phoning there? Why are you there? What? And then he's running around cleaning his, it's like, seriously. So yeah, be prepared. If it means that much to you, whether it's a job, a casting, or whatever, be prepared and just do the best.
What would be, in closing, what are your 3 tips then for pivoting and strategically focusing on your next career goal?
I believe in energy in the universe, so I feel if you do what is congruent, which is matches your energy vibes, it will be a success. So I feel my first tip would be to tap into who you are, understand what your values are. That, in the past you may have had to accept jobs because of money, because of financial pressures because of location, whatever. But take this time that we now have in lockdown or whenever, or to understand what your values and your drivers are, and just play around with it. Play around with thinking, okay, it might scare me. It might be a big thing, but no pressure. Just think about, okay, well, what if, and what would it look like? Then I would say, be prepared. Think about, try and get ahead of the game. Look at who you work for, where you work. Things may change, and you might not have a lot of notice, and it might come from left field. And so, think what are your plan A's, B's, C's, and D's. And see, I'll just say, the sun rises, the sun sets. Chill. Things could get tough. Things might, but you add value. You will survive. You will wake up, and you will go to bed, and it will happen again. And each time you do it, you will be given an opportunity. You will have an opportunity to do good stuff. And so if things aren't going your way tomorrow, just keep today, then just keep going on, and there will be a tomorrow where it will work out. And so the thing with those 3 tips, none of those are pertaining to actually how to find a job or how to keep a job or how to They're about staying in your lane, being your best self. And that, and it's for me, that's again the best advice for staying in a job, for getting a good job, for those things. I wouldn't say things like, do your LinkedIn, do your CV, do your whatever, because those are givens. Do those, but be mindful about how you're doing those things.
Oh, beautiful. I love those. Thank you. That's really cool. Thanks, sis.
Yay!
Oh, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It's all good. And we'll catch up soon. On the family Zoom, I think.
On the family Zoom tomorrow. We can watch Rapman.
Yeah. All right, then. You take it easy.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.